Hello, and welcome to the No Wrong Notes podcast, a show hosted by me, Veronica Kokis, holistic voice teacher and singer just like you. Grab a cup of tea, relax, and sit back as we discuss all things singing technique, mindset tips, and more so you can show up as the most confident and creative singer you can be. Hi, y'all, and welcome to another episode of No Wrong Notes. This week is another exciting interview episode, this time with Anna Mosoriak. Anna Mosoriak is a Cincinnati-based voice teacher and artist who explores singing through an artist-centered and trauma-informed perspective. After becoming burnt out from toxic academic training, Anna founded her studio, Sing Anyway, in 2020. Since then, she has been on a mission to help singers heal and trust their voices again. In this episode, we chat about trauma-informed teaching and singing and what that actually looks like. And I know that you'll get so many good tips and tricks and ideas out of today's episode. Anna is a teacher who is really changing the game when it comes to teaching voice, when it comes to singing. I think we need more teachers like Anna out there, and I'm so glad that I got to sit down and chat with her for this episode. I hope that you enjoy. And now let's dive into today's episode with Anna Mosoriak. All right, welcome to the podcast, Miss Anna Mosoriak. It's great to have you here on the No Wrong Notes podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and to talk with you.
All right, so let's get started. I'm sure listeners would love to hear more about you and your career as a voice teacher and singer. So if you would be so kind as to kind of let listeners know what do you do and how you got to where you are in your career.
Yes, absolutely. So if we're going back to sort of the origin story, I, as a young child, was really into musical theater, so I performed in a lot of musicals growing up. And as I entered into high school, I got into pretty serious vocal lessons myself, mostly geared toward classical music and opera, like so many of us. And then I ended up going to school for vocal performance for undergraduate and also graduate school. And so that was kind of where I was for the last long while. And I just ended up feeling pretty burnt out from that academic training, which is the origin of how I started Sing Anyway, which is my voice studio now. So that's basically geared toward people who have also dealt with burnout or just dealt with any sort of abuse or abusive practices from academic institutions. So yeah, I don't sing much classical and opera music anymore. I think my heart has found its way back to singing like musical theater and pop music and all of those things. So I took a pretty large break from singing myself for like maybe a year or two, and I've slowly since then have been inching my way back to finding a way to perform that feels good for me. So I feel like that covers most of it, I think.
I love that. And I feel like that really, a lot of what you just said kind of parallels my own experience. It's so interesting how, growing up loving maybe musical theater, or for me, like I really loved listening and singing pop music, but you get kind of pushed into this lane of classical singing, and this is kind of, what you do, and this is the path that you go on and everything. So going through that, I certainly appreciate all of the education that I've had in that, but it's so interesting to hear and kind of hit some similarities there. I think that's really cool. Gearing more towards your teaching, I really appreciate your trauma-informed approach to teaching and singing. And for those that might be unfamiliar with trauma-informed learning and singing, what does that actually look like in a lesson? Because I think that we can kind of get pie in the sky with some of these concepts, and so I think it'd be cool to understand what that looks like and why that kind of approach is important.
Yeah, absolutely. So trauma-informed teaching, at least from the way that I approach it, it's going to look, relatively different for every singer, but I think if I had to sum it down to one concept, it would just be meeting people where they are. So regardless of who or what or when or where is in front of you, just being mindful about meeting the person where they are today, not trying to change them, not trying to heal them or right what has been wronged, but just meeting them exactly as they are as a human being. And I think just being extra aware of somebody's lived experience, what you might know about them and what you might not know about them, and just approaching that from a place of sensitivity, I would say. And then in actual practice, I feel like it looks a lot more like instead of just going at the speed of light to try to like get a concept down, let's say belting, we're just taking our time to like really tune into what's going on with the body, what emotions might be popping up for people as they're going through a lesson because they can be really emotional. And then also just using like therapeutic tools in conjunction with vocal tools. So that can be anything from like breath work to having a student do like a journaling brain dump exercise before coming into a lesson if they're have a lot of anxiety when they come into a lesson. Just taking time to address, I think, the humanity before we start talking about all of the things that we need to work on with the singing is essentially the way that I think of that.
Yes, and I wish that I don't know. I feel like I mean, remind me, this is a silly kind of question and very prying question, but how old are you?
Yeah, I'm 27.
Okay, so like, and I'm 32 and I feel like I don't know, growing up there maybe wasn't as much of this awareness of the entire person, learning how to sing in like the mid late 2000s, early 2010s, and things like that. I feel like mental health was just kind of starting to become a mainstream thing that people talked about. And so I wish that I wish that I had had more spaces like that growing up. I think that all of this is really, really beautiful and important. It's so important to take into account the whole singer because we're more than just our voices. We're a whole human being with lots of like experience and baggage and everything. And having safe spaces to sing in is something that I value, and I know that you value as well. Why is safety important when learning about the voice? And if you feel up to sharing, what are some of the things that you do in your own singing or singing practice to cultivate a greater sense of safety?
Yeah, so in my eyes, I think safety is like paramount. I think it's the most important thing. And it can feel odd to talk about that concept with singing because so much of singing, I mean, you are literally, when you're performing, that fight or flight response is often turned on because the brain and body don't know the difference between like fighting for your life versus like singing in front of an audience. It can feel the same. So yes, a sense of safety is actually what allows us to tap into our creativity. So when we are like in survival mode and we're not feeling safe, it's impossible for our brain to access creativity, and that's what we need for any fun, good singing, in my opinion. So yeah, I think a lot of it is just kind of in personal practice and lessons, preparing the body and the mind to feel a sense of safety, have tangible grounding practices that you use to remind your body, hey, we're good. Like, it's okay to feel nervous and we're not in danger. We're not going to die. We're not needing to fight for our life. It's okay to feel nervous. That doesn't mean that we are in danger. So that's why I think safety is so important, is because we really just kind of need that bedrock to stay present in performance, to actually have fun and enjoy it. I feel like a lot of times when we're studying so seriously, it really does lose the fun element. And like singing is supposed to be fun, and it often turns into something that is not. So yeah, just always kind of returning back to like what are ways that I can make myself feel more safe in this moment. And it can be something, as small as like I'm wearing my giant blanket today, just because I need some comfort in this moment. Like doing a podcast can be nerve-wracking and scary. I don't need to show up and put on a brave face. I can just wear my blanket and like light a candle and talk to you. So it's like it can be as simple as like something really small sensory wise. But yeah, in my own singing, it's looked so many different ways. I am in like individual one-on-one therapy, which is I recommend to anyone no matter what stage in life that they are. I don't think that there's a replacement for that. So that's been really helpful. And then in addition to that, it's been a lot of work, I guess developing like self-compassion tools because I feel like along with safety that is one of the most important things to cultivate because singers are notoriously really hard on themselves when something's not going our way, when we don't like the way we just sang this or performed this, or, it's easy to feel really frustrated and like downtrodden. So just cultivating like self compassion tools to remind ourselves that like we are more than that note that we missed or that crack or that performance that maybe we worked really hard to prepare for but just on the day like didn't pan out. So a lot of that for me looks like mantras. A lot of it is honestly just like having a hand somewhere on my body to remind myself like you are in a body, you are a human being. This singing thing was not supposed to be flawless. It never is. The voice is like ever changing second to second. So just trying to really cultivate a sense of kindness with myself. And also, I would just say doing my best to let go of performing for validation, but rather performing for myself to have fun, to fill a personal need and want and goal rather than hoping finally I'll get the validation I need to feel good enough.
Oh man, you said so many good things. And my mind wants to go to every single one of them. But yes, oh man, all of this and especially the part of getting to that place where you're performing for yourself rather than for others. I think that is so important, and because I think we can be really critical on ourselves and our singing, especially those of us that have come up through that classical space where it seems like perfection is demanded of us and required. And I think when I don't know if you had this experience too, but I think when I started to be more compassionate and kind to myself and like even just saying, okay, so I didn't sing that exercise or sing that aria the way that I wanted to. Okay, I can try again. Like there's nothing wrong with trying again just a different way, and it's not the end of the world and you're still a beautiful human being. It's just like I think getting to that place was a real game changer, and I think that is so important. And I feel that as a culture we've kind of found ourselves in this place where the idea of safe spaces and safety and self-compassion, it's I don't want to get too spicy here, but I feel like it's starting to be kind of looked down upon, or people are viewing it kind of as a cliche. But these tools are so important, and it's like if you really want to make any sort of tangible change in your singing or in your life, these things work. There's a reason why we talk about these things all the time. But getting back to this idea of like self-compassion and love for the voice, one thing that I've appreciated about your posts online is that you don't push, quote, loving the voice, but rather accepting the voice. What advice would you have for someone that struggles with accepting the sound of their own voice?
Yeah, that's really it's really challenging. I kind of think of it in the same way that I would think of like body neutrality or like body acceptance, where instead of pushing ourselves to like love the way our body looks, understanding that like we are a human inside of a body, it's the least interesting thing about us. And we can appreciate what our body does for us rather than the aesthetics of how it looks, or how other people perceive it. So I kind of think of the voice in the same way as like, there are a lot of things about my voice that I don't love, but what I do appreciate is that it communicates things to me, especially when I'm in my like lower register, which I've always had a hard time with. I appreciate that it croaks and cracks down there because it's letting me know that I can sit down there and work through that area and that I might need a little extra TLC down there. I don't love the way my lower range sounds, but I accept that it communicates to me what it needs. I like that my voice is flexible. Like it's cool that it moves around. Just like really simple things like that. It doesn't have to be like My voice sounded so on point in this audition tape. I don't know a lot of people that listen back to themselves and think that they sound amazing, but you can point out really tangible things like that note sounded clear there. I worked really hard to do that. I'm glad it happened at this time. Um, just really like just tangible basic things that you can just point out. I'm so glad my voice expresses my emotions and that you can hear when I'm about to cry, when I'm singing a song. Like just little tiny things like that, and just kind of looking at the voice as like an observer rather than being like the person in it and being like, you suck, that sounded bad, but pulling yourself out of it and almost like separating yourself a little bit.
Yes, yes. And I try to get this across to my students too, especially when listening to recordings, especially when my students are listening to recordings of their voices. And I try to do this too when I'm recording my practice and listening and playing it back, is that it's like as much as you can, I mean, it's hard, but as much as you can remain objective and like you said, being an observer of, oh, okay, there was some nice clarity in the tone here, or oh, I sang that well. Oh, I can hear the emotion that's coming through my voice at this point in the recording and or in the tape. But I think that is so crucial, and I think some people equate self compassion with like self love and loving your voice and loving yourself, and it's like you don't have to. Like you can, I mean, you can connect those things, but it doesn't have to be that thing. Sometimes it's just being that objective observer and saying, "Oh, okay, that was nice, that was good," that sort of thing. Um,
Right. Like the whole self-compassion tool I just want to speak on is that is a tool that you use usually when you're feeling bad. Like it's not it's something like if I make a mistake or something, it's more about like it's okay, you're a human being, you're allowed to make mistakes and we're going to try better next time now that we know more. Like
yes,
that's exactly what it is.
yes, yes, yes. It's yeah, exactly. All of what you just said. Mwah, chef's kiss, brilliant. But kind of pivoting to a different topic here. Something I've been thinking about a lot lately is the idea of singing as a form of resistance. You mentioned earlier appreciating your voice for the things it can communicate, right? And I know that you've been thinking and discussing this topic online as well. So I'd love to hear more from you on how you think we can use our voices to affect real change in our local communities and country. What does it mean to use singing as a form of resistance? Because I think that that's a really big idea, but I think it's sometimes hard to kind of visualize what that would look like.
Yeah, I mean, Black folks and folks of the global majority have been doing this since the beginning of time. So I think it's a lot of like, it can be whatever that is, but a lot of it's gathering in community, singing together, singing protest songs, singing songs that have clear political messaging. Um, I'm not the first person to say this, I won't be the last, but like in a time that's so volatile, it's really important to gather in community. And I think using our voices in a singing way is wonderful. I think using it in a speaking way is even better, and speaking up as much as possible about what's going on. But yeah, I want singers to just know that like you have a gift for a reason, you have a voice for a reason, so please use that. Gather with people to do song circles. Singing is healing, and doing really anything that's healing and joyful in a time as dark as this is just as important as all of the other tangible things that you can do as well.
Yeah, and I think just to wanted to plug your offering. Isn't it safe to sing? Isn't it the singing space where people can gather and kind of share their
Hmm.
voices? Do you want to talk about that for a
Yeah.
little bit?
Yeah, so those are called my sing and shares, and those are once a month. It's just like a free like hour. And usually I think I limit it to like 6 slots, but I'll open it up if more people come. But yeah, it's just a time to just be together and either to share something that someone's been working on if they want to sing, or just sharing what's going on in your singing life verbally without the song. But yeah, I've had a couple of them so far. They've been really wonderful. And yeah, it's just kind of a time to just carve out in the day to just be together and be in community and Yeah, a lot of what I do in there too is people can consent to whether or not they'd like feedback. The feedback is exclusively only positive, though. I'm not having people come in and give critique. I just don't find that useful in that space. So, yeah, we just kind of get in there and just shower each other with support and love. And sometimes people sing, sometimes they talk, and sometimes they share, a song that they've been listening to that they really like the lyrics of and share that, which is just as meaningful. So, yeah, that's been something that I've been, really focusing on because there's not a lot of spaces to gather for free a lot of the time. And so yeah, it's nice to just have that once a month hour long session for whoever wants to come can drop in.
I love that. Because I think we talk about using our voices as resistance or singing as resistance, but this is literally putting it into practice, right? And being in a supportive space too. I think it's nice to have spaces where we can gather and just kind of share our voices and have it not be just like a master class or like a workshop. I mean, those like master classes and workshops are really useful if that's like what you're looking for and looking for that more structured feedback. But I think it's really great to have spaces like this. Moving on to maybe a more fun topic. What are some of your hot takes when it comes to singing, the music industry, opera, anything that is singing adjacent or singing itself?
Yeah, I feel like all my hot takes are going to be things that like most people are on board with at this point, but my immediate hot take is always like I don't think that belting is like the only way to be a good singer, and I think that a lot of people that want to learn how to sing like of course want to learn how to belt, and that's totally fine. I love belting as much as the next person. I just think that that's like 2% of what singing is. There's so much more that we can build upon before we just like, belt our faces off. And I think the musical theater industry in particular is like the people who are responsible for that narrative. So I often am like, you don't have to belt if you don't want to. You can still mix and do your thing and like go to your audition. Like I think there's just been a little bit too much emphasis on it. And I don't want to sound like an old crotchety grandma, but I also feel like, as a huge fan of American Idol back in the early days, I do think that they also contributed to this phenomena. Is like, well, if you can't belt, then like what's interesting about your voice? And there are so many more interesting things to me in a singer than how high they can belt or how often they belt or all of that. So I would say that's my first one, which I don't know if it's a hot take, but yeah, that's that one. And then the other one that I think again most people probably are on board with at this point, but maybe not. It's just that like there's this belief that classical training is like it has to be the foundation of singing and like it's like the best way to learn how to sing is like with classical training. I don't even really know what classical training means. Like I don't even know what that sentence means. It's made up words to me. I just want to tell everybody that that's not accurate.
I am 100% on board with that statement of classical singing, not being the only way or not even being the best way to learn how to sing. But it's so crazy how there are people that still believe that. I see it all. I don't know if you're on Facebook. I don't get on Facebook a whole lot, but sometimes when I'm just perusing in that voice teachers group that's on there, you'll see stuff like that all the time where people are like,
I can't be in those groups because I will fight everyone, and my energy is too
right?
precious.
Right? Literally, the only reason I stay is that sometimes there's like good song suggestions on there, like stuff I haven't heard of, but oh my God, there's always somebody that's like, oh, classical singing is the only way to learn how to sing. And it's like, actually, no. So it's crazy how we have to still keep talking about this, but maybe the culture will change eventually. I love this though. This is great. This is great. Before we kind of move on to our rapid fire questions, though, are there any projects you're currently working on, either as a singer, teacher, or activist, that you'd like to promote or share?
Well, I already talked about the sing and share, so that's great. Personally, I am working on two different cabarets right now in my personal singing life. One of them is a queer cabaret, so it's called Visions of Us, and it's all songs that represent the queer experience. So I'm really excited to sing in that with some new people. And then
Is that local to? Because you're in Cincinnati, right?
yeah, that's local to
Nice.
Cincinnati. Yeah, that's in March. And then I'm also working on another cabaret that is called Cabaret on the Runway, and it's a bunch of local fashion designers designing clothing that are like themed to musicals, and then we will be singing on like the side of the runway while the models walk down. So I'm like
Oh,
really
that is
excited.
cool.
Yeah.
I keep thinking, or something I've thought about before is like, how can we get music just more out there in the community and stuff, like whether it's classical music or musical theater, Um, but I love how it's like taking music into a completely different space. I love that. That is so cool. Very exciting. And all of that, of course, is local to Cincinnati. So if you're in the Cincinnati area, maybe check that out. Did you have anything else that you wanted to promote?
No, not really. I think that covers it.
All right, well, let's pivot to the rapid fire questions. My first one that I ask everybody is coffee or tea?
Ooh, tea.
What kind of tea?
I love a good like fruit flavored tea, like an orange tea or like a
Ooh.
raspberry or blueberry tea.
Oh, yum. That sounds really good. What is a song that you've been working on?
Oh my goodness. Well, I just did Ring of Keys from Fun Home for an audition, so that's what I was working on most recently.
Nice. What is a singer or band that you've had on repeat lately?
It's always gonna be Taylor Swift for me. I'm a huge Swiftie, so
Nice. What era have you had on repeat?
um a little bit of Tortured Poets, a little bit of Reputation. It's been kind of in the rounds, a little bit of Midnights here and again, but yeah.
Nice. What is an album that pumps you up?
Ooh, there's a great album, Olivia Dean. She is a British artist, if you haven't listened to her. She's got a great live album. I think it's literally called like Olivia Dean Live at at like the Jazz Cafe, I think is what the
Okay.
title is. It's like a black and white album cover. Amazing live, like brass band. She's incredible. I recommend.
Oh, that's fun. What is a book that you recommend everyone read at least once?
Oh gosh, that's a really tough question for rapid fire.
I'm a
I'm just gonna say
bookworm.
I'm just gonna say the book I'm reading right now. Wait, no. Wait, hold on. Hold on, let me pull up my Fable. This is
Well,
not
what book are you reading right now?
well, right now I'm reading a book called The Sea of Tranquility. And
That's a
it
great book. I love that book. That's a good one
I
too.
would recommend that one because it's really well written, but my answer is probably ooh, Educated by Tara Westover.
Oh, that is a really, yeah, that's a good one. That's like, I read a lot of books and buy a lot of books. And whenever I'm done with a book, like a physical copy that I have, if it if it didn't hit me hard, I will usually like sell it or give it away. But I've had that book since 2020 and I'm still holding on to it because I'm like, that hit me so hard and I definitely want to reread it eventually. So that's an excellent recommendation.
Yeah.
Next question is, what is your favorite form of self-care?
Mm, I'm gonna have to go with sleep
Nice.
or watching or a walk. Or my favorite activity to do in general is like watching a TV, like a reality TV show or a TV show where I can just like shut my brain off and just like have a nice beverage.
That sounds really lovely. Though I must ask, as like someone who really enjoys reality TV, what show, I guess?
Unfortunately, it's 90 Day Fiancé for me.
Oh my God, I used to love that show. I actually fell off of watching that within like the last year or so, but oh my God, like especially the kind of seasons that were just before 2020 or like just after 2020 or like even those lockdown ones. I remember there was one episode of like B90 where it was like Darcy and Tom were on there and oh my God, they were on Zoom and they were like, it was hysterical. Oh my
I'm
God.
watching The Last Resort right now, which is like they're on the
Yes.
brink of divorce, and
Yep,
it's
yep.
so good.
That one is crazy too. I watched like a couple episodes of the first season of that. And oh my God. Absolute train wreck television. But my last question is, what is the best advice you've ever been given? It could be singing related or not.
Mm, I think it was from my I'll go with singing advice because, well, I'll do twofold. Singing advice was from my teacher from undergrad named Stephen Paul Spears. If you're listening to this, Stephen, hi. But he was the person that looked at me one day when I was like being really hard on myself, getting really frustrated, and he reminded me, Anna, singing is supposed to be fun. And I've kept that statement with me, and I've tried to spread that word because I think that we lose it somewhere along the way sometimes. So that's probably the best advice or statement that's been given to me for singing. And then for regular life stuff, my therapist once told me that anything that I want, I will be able to have. And I think everybody should have that mindset. Anything you want, you will be able to have.
That's like some manifestation type stuff. Like I think that was a card. I have like a deck of cards that are like have similar sayings like that on it.
Yeah.
And I think I pulled that one yesterday or today. So that is really funny that you say that. I love that. Awesome. Well, this has been a really lovely conversation, Anna, and thank you so much for coming on the No Wrong Notes podcast.
Thanks for having me.
All right, all right. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode with Anna Mosoriak. If you want to find out more about Anna and her work, you can do so via the show description. If you liked this episode, I would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star rating and review. Doing so helps more people discover this podcast. And if you're on YouTube, would love it if you liked this video. If you want more singing content, follow me on social media on Instagram and TikTok. The links are in the show description. And in the meantime, happy singing, y'all.